Massive moves are incoming for the Toronto Blue Jays as GM Ross Atkins has come out and revealed his off-season plans ahead of what's going to be one of the most interesting and active off-seasons for the Blue Jays. We're going to break down exactly what he said and discuss what moves could be coming for the Toronto Blue Jays as reports have come out revealing some interesting targets for the Jays as well. So I'm going to break all that down in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're part of the percentage that aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's going to be a very active off-season. We'll have you covered with daily Jays content. So make sure to hit that button. But let's dive right into it. Obviously, we know that over the past couple of days, Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins have said some wild things surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays in their offseason or their postseason press conference, sorry. And the unfortunate thing here is that they're both returning. Mark Shapiro is going to be returning. Ross Atkins is going to be returning. And what they need to do now is do what they haven't and they have failed to do over the past handful of years since they joined back in 2016. And that is make some meaningful additions in the offseason and build a competent, roster and offense actually translates to postseason wins. And even at this point, making the playoffs. And Ross Atkins was asked about what his priorities are going to be this offseason, and they basically, he said some interesting things. So let's start with this, and this is one of the bigger pieces of news we could gather from that. So asked about the Jays' interest in starting pitching, Ross Atkins says Blue Jays fans will stay in the market for impact starters while also exploring fits for depth starters this winter. Now, this question was obviously asked directly involving pitching, and you look at the Blue Jays' rotation last season and even the rotation heading into next year. You're on the final years for Chris Bassitt and Kevin Gausman. They're not getting any younger. You have guys in the pipeline like Ricky Tiedemann, who probably won't be ready until 2026 because of his injury. Jake Bloss, who is almost MLB ready and will probably factor into the equation. Guys like Alek Manoah, like you have some young starters there that can probably factor into the rotation pretty well. But when you're looking at actually winning next year, you still have the three-headed rotation of José Berríos, Kevin Gausman, and Chris Bassitt. But aside from that, there is a lot of question marks. And whether you want to believe in the Bowden Francis, being a very good number 5 starter on this team, or even better, you can. But at the same time, I'm not entirely convinced that a starting rotation surrounding José Berríos, an aging Chris Bassitt, an aging Kevin Gausman, and an interesting Bowden Francis is enough to really make a push in the AL East, the best division, or one of the best divisions in baseball. So they're going to need to add some starting pitching. That's what Ross Atkins said they're going to do. They're looking for an impact starter. Now, there's a few different impact starters that they can go for, and we'll discuss that in a future video. But he also mentioned exploring fits for depth starters this winter as well. And you're looking at there's a lot of different depth starters out there. We've talked about a few of them on this channel, but it's interesting because you think about how the rotation has done this past year, and it's supposed to be one of the bigger strengths. They need to continue to add because at this point, their core of starting pitchers is not getting any younger, and they need to continue to add to this team, something they failed to do last year in order to do that. And when talking about the bullpen now, and you also have, of course, factor in Yariel Rodriguez, Ross Atkins called Yariel a solid option. Rodriguez a solid option for the Blue Jays in the rotation and is happy with where his workload is as a starter, but added, if we were to require one, I think he would be an exceptional reliever. So this is an interesting tidbit again, and this kind of flows into their starting pitching. I don't know if they think Yariel Rodriguez is a full starter in this league. I think they think that he can give 4 to 5 innings, but I'm not entirely sure that they're convinced that he can be a starter that goes out there every night and throws 80 to 100 pitches. And that's why they're exploring options for impact starters, also exploring options for depth starters this winter. And depending on who they go for is kind of going to factor into what happens with Yariel Rodriguez, which at this point could probably, he would be a very good reliever. We've seen him in small stints be very good, and it would add to their bullpen, which is one of the biggest problems for the Toronto Blue Jays this year, and we'll dive into it in a minute, is their bullpen. And by adding another starter, it in turn would move Yariel to the bullpen, or Bowden Francis, but probably Yariel, where he says, Ross Atkins said he would be an exceptional reliever. So it's interesting. I like the way they're going about it here. It does make some sense, especially by talking about impact players, because at this point, adding guys with high floors and low ceilings like Justin Turner's, like Kevin Kiermaier's, those times have passed for the Toronto Blue Jays. They need to go out and actually add impact bats, add impact players, and if they can do that, then of course they will be able to hopefully compete next season. When you're looking at how much money the Jays have to play with, so with their arbitration projections, Vladdy's obviously going to make a bunch, and assuming they non-tender Dylan Tate, which they might not actually do considering how good he's been this season, the Jays would project for a cash payroll of $178 million right now, and they were approximately at $228 by this time method last year. So $50 million to play with is a lot. You're looking at some guys that the Jays can go after, and there's a bunch of different ones. You can think here, maybe even Alex Bregman, and we're going to be diving into this all off season up until, of course, the Jays make some big moves. But Alex Bregman tweeted after getting swept in the Wild Card Series, "Thank you, Houston." Probably a good buy. He probably knows he's not returning. I already know who Atkins' first call of free agency will be, and I think this is one of the more likely options. He was linked to the Jays The Astros were shopping him last offseason. And now, of course, Alex Bregman is linked to the Jays again by, of course, not just Twitter, but on multiple reports. We know that they've been linked to him in the past. And now that he's definitely seemingly gone out of Houston, this would be the time for Ross Atkins to swing for the fences a little bit here. Now, the concern is it may age similarly to the George Springer contract, where it's good for a year or two and then it starts to tail off. But the Jays have to make a move here. They have to add an impact starter, or else things are going to start to hit the fan for the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think Alex Bregman would be a very interesting option, like we've discussed in the past. And we know that Mark Shapiro's come out and said the season has been a bitter disappointment. I'm confident that next year will be a much better year and things like that. But when you're looking at guys that they could target, now, again, we're going to be breaking down starters in a future video. There is a few. We discussed one a couple weeks ago, but there's not too many elite starters out there that, are cheap. There's really none. That being said, if you're looking at the bullpen, because one of the things the Jays have to do is improve the bullpen. Let's say they were to get a starter and they move Yariel to the bullpen. That's a decent step. You have guys like Jordan Romano to agree. And Ross Atkins spoke out on who the closer will be in 2025. I don't know. We have some guys that currently on a roster have certainly done it before, and they will certainly positionally be in that role to do it again. Atkins on Bowden and Yariel, and if they will move on from or look for impact arms in the bullpen or just look for depth arms, they said I would say we'll be in both of those markets for sure. We've afforded the ability to do so where we don't have to be in the impact market, but we can be. And speaking of impact arms, there's obviously guys like Josh Hader. Now, obviously, he's with the Astros and is under contract till 2029, but it kind of sets the precedent where the Astros sign him to a 5-year, $90 million deal. He goes out, he puts up 71 games, puts up a 3.80 ERA. And the point of this is the Jays shouldn't go out and sign a reliever for an extreme amount of money. They're so volatile. They're up and down. The ERAs fluctuate every single year. We've seen it with guys like Rafael Montero as well. It gets to the point where if you're signing a reliever for 5 years, $90 million, however much you're signing him for, you're really handicapping the rest of your team. Now, the Jays desperately need bullpen help. I just don't think signing a ton of expensive relievers is going to be the way to get through that. I think you sign not bargain guys, but guys who, decent deals, guys who think that can perform well. You obviously, if you get a good starting pitcher, then of course you can move Ariel to the bullpen where he's seen success in the past. You've seen guys like Bowden Francis have success in the past. And whether you want to go out and sign a guy like maybe Max Fried, we know that the Jays are in the market for an impact starting pitcher. He is a pending free agent. He's a very, very good starter in this league, a 3.25 ERA in 29 games. Like, if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, those are the guys you should be targeting. A guy that's really good. Obviously, Max Fried is a starter. He's not a reliever, but a very good starter, which will help in turn your bullpen, help with some of the prospects they can bring up. You have some guys that can play the bullpen as well that are in the prospect and the farm system. So at this point, it's going to be interesting to see what the Jays do with this team. And they're interested in impact starters. So I think a guy like Max Fried could be coming from a team that wins like the Atlanta Braves. I think it could be a very interesting match and fit if the Jays decide to go that route. It seems like they're going to be going for an impact starter. So I think Max Fried could be an interesting look as well. But let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Do you think they should spend big on the bullpen, or do you think they should go for some more starters? Let me know. See you guys tomorrow.